Thanks everybody for tuning into the podcast today. I am Mike Monteforti. I am super excited about our guest today. I've got my good friend Ryan with us. He works for a company that is called Minute Women Home Care. He's going to talk about that, talk about the company, talk about what they do. This one is super important. Honestly, I think of all the podcasts we've done over the last year, no offense to my previous guests, but this one might be the most important one to our clients, especially our clients that have come to see us for elder law. So Ryan, thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
So give me the super quick elevator version.
Sure.
What do you guys do?
Minute Women Home Care is a private home care company. We send caregivers out to families, and generally seniors who have dementia, and we focus on mid to late stage dementia to help seniors age in place.
And we're going to talk in a lot more detail about that, because the late stage dementia part is what makes you guys different from so many other home health care services out there. And there are a lot out there, and some of them are great and some of them are not so great, but until you and I met at a networking event, I hadn't heard of any that said we help people that have late stage dementia. Just I didn't know it existed until we talked, because usually when we get to that point, that's when it's, okay, this person needs to go to facility-based care now because we don't have the ability to take care of them in the home. But so we'll get to that. I'm putting the cart before the horse. Before we get there, how'd you wind up doing this kind of work?
I grew up locally here. I moved out to Denver after college, and I got a bad phone call that my mom had stage 4 cancer after a few years of being out in Denver, drinking beer and snowboarding. And we're a small family, my dad, myself, and my mom, so I moved back down to Florida, where they had retired to from the area, and was there for her for the last 3 or 4 months of her life. And through that experience of us needing private home care, we ended up getting 24/7 care, as well as getting hospice services in the home. My aunt, who owned and started Minute Women, was around, funerals and weddings, right? It's when you see the families, and she said that if this is something you're interested in and being a business owner, which was something I always wanted to do, maybe this is an opportunity to purchase the company and take over the reins and be able to help people the way that my mom was helped. So I ended up moving back to the area where I never thought I would be back, other than visiting every once in a while, and took over Minute Women, and it's been able to grow over the last 13 years, and luckily I haven't run it into the ground. So she's happy about that.
No, that's super cool. When people ask me, how did I get into estate planning, I tell people a lot of the time, I didn't choose it, it chose me, because I had a similar experience with my grandfather, and he got sick, and so I got involved trying to figure out a way to help him and help my grandmother, and that's when I found my calling in elder law. So to hear that you had a similar family experience, that you got a phone call and boom, that changed everything. And fortunately, sometimes those events aren't great, like your mom's passing, and my grandfather got dementia. He eventually passed. But it led me to some place that I said, this is my life's work, and it just sounds like, again, that phone call, and it's like a domino in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was sitting at my kitchen table in my apartment in the Denver area, just like racking my brains on how to start a business. What business was it going to be? And then, these situations changed, and all of a sudden I had this opportunity out of a really bad experience, and I decided to go for it and grab the bull by the horns and see what I could make of it. She hadn't been involved in business in about 10 years, and at the time we did house cleaning and home care. So the benefit was, I focused on the house cleaning side, and we've since shut that down, and we only do home care. But it's a lot easier to replace and talk to a family when you've broken their vase versus messed up the home care side. So we focused on that, got my bearings on how to run a business, and then started focusing more and more on the home care until we phased house cleaning out and only do home care now for our services.
Gotcha, makes sense. So talk to me about the thing that, like I said, I think sets you apart is helping folks with late stage dementia. But talk to me about kind of in general services you guys offer,
Sure.
and then I want to dig in on the late stage stuff because it's amazing, and I want to get there too.
Yeah, so home care can be a little confusing for people because there's so many different facets under the umbrella of what's called home care. So private home care is when caregivers are coming into the home and you're paying for them privately. It's generally 90% of the time it's a check, a credit card, ACH payment. Long-term care insurance will pay for private home care, but that's not as common as somebody paying privately for that.
Sure.
So basically, we come in and we help out with activities of daily living, which is getting somebody up in the morning, all the way putting them back to bed, getting them dressed, doing personal care, errands, meal preparation, fall prevention, all those types of non-medical things that you and I take for granted, like being able to bend over and tie our shoes in the morning. That's difficult as we age, and that can be a real problem and lead to sticky situations where having an aide next to you is going to make your life easier, and it's going to allow you to stay in the home, because so many parents have made their kids promise them, never put me in the nursing home, never put me there. So that's where private home care really became as an industry, to be able to provide that service so seniors could age in place.
Yeah, and aging in place is hugely important. It is a goal for most people. No one ever says, I want to go into the nursing home, right?
Absolutely.
So for most folks, the goal is to stay in the home where they've lived for, whether it's a short period or their entire lives. It's still, home is home, and they would rather be there and age in place there. And like you said, getting the kids to promise, hey, don't send me to a nursing home, promise me that you're going to let me stay there. But as we know, most folks, their kids aren't trained professionals when it comes to home care, and a lot of times they get to the point where the kids might try their best, but the level of care needed or the time required just goes beyond what the kids can deliver. And you guys, the services you provide, range all the way from short amounts of time to all the way up to even live-in care, right? You guys run the full gambit on that, right?
A little bit of a correction. There are private agencies that will do shorter hours, maybe 12, 15, 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
We focus more on 40 hours a week and above, and the main reason for that is when you're working with folks with dementia and memory loss, having continuity of caregivers is really important, so you don't have a new caregiver showing up every single day.
Right.
So like anybody, the more hours that you can give somebody, the more consistency of a job you can provide is going to attract more consistent caregivers. So our mission is to match long-term clients with long-term caregivers. There are certainly agencies out there that do shorter hours, but make sure you set your expectations that if you're looking for shorter hours situations, there's likely to be call-outs, there's likely going to be changing faces, new caregivers each week. Most people don't like that, but of course it's an expensive industry, everything's out of pocket, so budgeting and financials, which is certainly more of your department, but that plays a big factor into what people can get for care.
Yeah, sure. And talking about trying to have a consistent caregiver, especially for folks with dementia, whether it's early stage or beyond, having the same person as opposed to someone new all the time can really help them to avoid that confusion of, well, wait, who are you, coming into the house. So
exactly.
I love that you guys are trying to provide consistent care so that we've got the easiest possible road for people that are dealing with the disease and don't see a new face every other day. So again, what I think sets you guys apart and what I didn't even know existed until we spoke was providing care for people with late stage dementia, because as you know, symptoms that come with late stage dementia, not all the time, but often there can be an aggressiveness, there can be a paranoia, there can even be physical issues, because people become deeper into the disease, they get more confused, they can get angry because they know they're confused. And a lot of times in the past anyway, before I met you, that's the point where families are often saying, okay, we don't have anyone that's equipped to deal with that, so it's time for mom or dad to go to a nursing home, even though I promised them they weren't going to go, and I feel horrible about it. I don't have anybody that can deal with them at this stage of the dementia, but you guys can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that folks need to know about Massachusetts and private home care, and it's different in each state, is that there are different requirements to become a private home care company. Some have licensure, Massachusetts does not. So that means the onus is really on the family members and the customers to do their diligence to make sure that they're vetting the different agencies that are out there, and there are a lot of us. But fundamentally, what we were finding is that, and we were this way before, so I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but it was a jack of all trades, master of none. They were really good at doing fall prevention, doing some simple ADLs. But once you got into that mid and late stage dementia, those caregivers weren't trained to handle those complex situations that come and the symptoms that come with this disease and with people living with dementia. Yeah. So what we've done is we've gone through numerous training apps. We use the All's Better app right now, which is accredited by the Alzheimer's Association, to train our caregivers so they're prepared for those situations. And then as we get to know clients and as the disease progresses, if certain symptoms start popping up, we can always send out further training to our caregivers so that they can get a refresher course on, hey, if somebody's agitated all the time, this is how you go about doing this versus doing it the standard way that you might do it for somebody that isn't suffering with dementia.
Right. And that's one of those things that training is so essential to, because I found talking to family members and my own family over the years, especially at the beginning. I remember with my grandfather, we'd have this tendency to almost argue with him, like, no, that's not what it was. Remember, we did it on this day, and he'd be certain it was something else, and you get to the point where we're saying, okay, that's not the way to go, because he doesn't remember. Arguing with him just makes him upset, right? And so it's not going to help anything. But you guys are training your caregivers on techniques to be able to deal with this stuff so that they're ready when these kinds of things happen.
Absolutely. It's about quality of life. At the end of the day, arguing over a date or a time or whether something happened, in their world, it happened. And so you might as well just go with it. It doesn't hurt to have a little white lie out there and to just go with the flow, and if it makes their quality of life better versus ruining their day. One of the big examples we talk about all the time is when you have a spouse that's passed away and somebody that thinks that their loved one is still alive. The worst thing in the world to do is remind them that they've passed away, and then all of a sudden they're reliving that experience all over again every single time you say, "Dad, don't you remember? Mom died 5 years ago." You know what? Mom's out at the grocery store. She'll be back in an hour or two, and you'll be able to see her. And how about we go watch your favorite movie, or go do this puzzle, or whatever activity they like, and then you can redirect somebody to focus their energies on something else, and then you avoid that conflict, and the quality of life improves for that person.
Yeah, and them reliving the fact, maybe even if they do remember at that point that mom died, what good is that doing
exactly.
that right then and there, other than just making them upset?
Yep.
Right? How did you even figure out, hey, there's a need for this, someone that can provide in-home care with late-stage dementia, and even figure out how to train on this sort of thing? Because again, I don't know of anyone else that does this, which is why I think this is so important, and I'm so glad that you came in today, is because I want my clients to know about it, because before I talked to you, I never heard of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, quite frankly, it was our own failures, right? You learn from doing, and we would have situations where we were caring with somebody who had maybe early to mid-stage dementia, and then all of a sudden those symptoms progressed, and we realized that our caregivers were not equipped to handle that. And so many home care agencies out there all claim that they can care for somebody with dementia, which is true. I mean, if somebody's pleasant, is just forgetful, and they're not having these complex issues, it's not really a big problem. But once something progresses and it becomes complex, that's where we started realizing that our caregivers weren't prepared for that. And as we did research, as we looked around, we, like you said, saw a wide open opportunity to say, hey, listen, we can really go all in, put the poker chips into the middle of the table and say, this is what we're going to do. And that's what we've done, and it's been a success thus far.
Yeah, it's amazing, because again, well, I promised I'm not going to send them to a nursing home, but now I don't know what to do. I don't have anybody that can deal with them, especially, again, they're agitated or angry, and I don't know what else to do, and it's time for them to go to a facility. To have this option of, hey, we've got caregivers trained to be able to deal with this and keep them home, it's a gift that you're giving them. And for the family members, too, to be able to say, I kept my word, right? I kept them out of a facility. They didn't want to go, because they always have that guilt if that time comes.
Absolutely. I remember my grandmother with her mom. She was living with us in Concord, and 2 weeks before she passed away, we finally made the decision to move her into a nursing home, and she passed away 2 years later. And I remember my mom feeling guilt about that. Like, I just need to make it 2 more weeks, and grandmother could have passed away in the home with her family around her versus at a nursing home. So there's a lot of emotion when it comes to caring for loved ones, end of life, and these diseases that impact folks.
Yeah. Talk to me about your process. So if someone calls, and we'll get into your contact info and stuff in a bit, but someone calls and says, hey, I need help. I've got a spouse or another loved one that needs assistance. Do you guys, where does it go from there? Is an assessment done? Just kind of walk me through the beginning. What happens when I call?
Yeah, in an ideal world, we would send somebody out and do an in-depth assessment, ideally with your mom or your dad, to see exactly the environment that they're in, what's going on, get a better idea. You know, when you're in person, you certainly get more details, but we can do that assessment over the phone. The fact of the matter is, we do get a lot of clients that are calling us in crisis. So if that can't happen, then so be it. We'll send somebody out to be able to hold down the fort, if you will, until we can go through that process. But ideally, we go through an assessment, and then we put milestones in, because you know, a caregiver is not going to show up and just be Mary Poppins and everything's better. But we can say, hey, listen, and if you look at it from somebody else's perspective, if somebody showed up at 9 o'clock at night to give you a shower that you've never met, you might be a little apprehensive about that.
Yeah.
So, hey, there might be a week where it takes some time getting to know somebody, developing some trust, making some meals, going for walks. And maybe by the 3rd or 4th week, then personal care and showering can be introduced. So there can be some milestones and steps in that, but we eventually get there.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you're right. Okay, here's so-and-so, you never met them before, they're going to come give you a shower now. Well, wait a minute.
Yeah, hold on there. Right. And then there's some that are like, woo, let's go.
Okay.
But, you know.
And then at that point, do you guys make recommendations as far as how many hours of care they need, or whether like this person really needs 24-hour care, they really need live-in care? Is that advice that a client can get from you once you kind of go in and do your assessment?
Absolutely, and it's not just about billing the most amount of hours that we can. We want it to be right for the family. So if we're seeing that somebody's declining, or symptoms are worsening, or there's needs to be even a modification in the hours, so it's the same amount of hours but maybe just a different start time and end time, we can give that advice. The feedback from the caregivers is crucial. Our supervision visits are crucial to be able to give that feedback, especially now in 2023, almost 2024. So many adult children live further and further away from where their parents are. So that constant communication is part of the bedrock of where we've been successful.
I like that part of it as well, is that constant communication, so that everybody knows what's going on, or we're all always on the same page. So now, okay, for clients of mine that say, okay, I could use this. I could use this for a spouse, or I could use this for mom and dad, or whomever. How do we start? Do we call? Do we go online? How do we get the train rolling?
Absolutely. A simple call is probably the best way. Our number is 781-862-3300. And our website, just type in Minute Women Home Care, 4 words into Google, and we'll pop right up, and you can kind of review our information. There's a lot of good information. Not as robust as your website, by the way, but we're getting there. There's a lot of good information on the website to kind of figure out if this is the right choice for you, and then you can make the call after that.
All right, that's excellent. So we want to do a little research and find out. We can go Minute Women Home Care. Website's going to come up. Do me a favor, give the phone number one more time for anybody that's just listening and doesn't have the visual on it.
781-862-3300.
All right, perfect. So Ryan, this is great. This is hugely informative. This is something that, again, I think is groundbreaking, and for doing this for as long as I have, it's hard to surprise me. So for me to find something that I said, wow, this is amazing, and I think changes the game, is fantastic. I can't wait to share this with clients of mine, because I know that we've got folks out there that are struggling and are kind of at that point where they're saying, is long-term care in a facility going to be needed now, and I don't want to do that, and what can we do? Now I've got an option to say, well, call Ryan's company, call Minute Women. They are going to be able to come out and do an assessment and you know, with a little luck, keep someone in their home for the long term. So this is fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time. I know my clients are going to find this hugely beneficial, so thanks so much.
Yeah, and I'll only add just to that, hey, listen, if somebody calls us and they're not the right client for us, we have a wealth of relationships with other home care companies in the area, and we're not afraid to say, hey, listen, this is the better choice for you, and you know, point you in the right direction, because the goal of us is to help people, whether that's using our services or somebody else's, and we'll all benefit from that in the long run.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
You.